1090 AM, WILD, a Radio 1 station, is doing their part to measure the movement. Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network proudly presents Measuring the Movement, a TV1 special presentation hosted and moderated by Tom Joyner from the Tom Joyner Morning Show and Roland Martin from TV1's Washington Watch, live from New York. And now, time to measure the movement, courtesy of TV1.
1090 AM WILD here in Boston is the only African-American radio station that is representative of what the Reverend Al Sharpton, Tom Joyner, and Roland Martin and others are putting together to measure the movement, to inform you, educate you, empower you, and preparing for a movement plan for the Black agenda.
Folks, welcome back to the National Action Network, Measuring the Movement Forum, live from the First Corinthian Baptist Church in Harlem. Let's go to Tom Joyner with some comments from the web. Tom?
Yeah, the comments from the web are hot. We will continue, it says, to have these talks unless we address the Black family. Values are instilled by a parent. That's Joan White.
Good point. Also,
from BlackAmericaWeb.com.
That's a good point. What else you got?
I've got my 26-year-old nephew has been in prison for 8 years and will be released in June. He will come home to a neighborhood full of gang members and drug dealers. There are no jobs and barely any services out here. I almost think he's better off in prison. Wow. Then I have Denise, one more. I have Denise right here. Denise? More on that subject. Denise, your comment?
Yes, my name is Denise Colson, founder
Speak to the microphone, please.
My name is Denise Colson, founder of Young Gen Society. My question is, I would like to know what type of programs are we going to put in place for young men when they come home after being incarcerated? Okay. There's nothing for them. You know, I'm constantly hearing them complaining, what should I do? Where should I go?
Okay. Just like the lady said, she thinks it's better off in prison.
Ben Jealous.
Jobs is really central to all of this. You know, we were talking about families.
Lean into it.
All right. Jobs is really central to all of this. We're talking about families that can't stay together. And the reality is that when the unemployment rate goes up, the marriage rate goes down. We have, you know, you can go to a church and get job training if you're coming out of prison, but then no one will give you a job. We are working right now with some of the biggest employers in the country to change their hiring practices. And we will have a major announcement in the next 3 months to make it easier for formerly incarcerated people to find a job. Because if we create more jobs for Main Street and we don't get access to jobs for Back Street, we'll be back here next year talking about the same problem.
One second. Congressman Clyburn.
Let me ask you, and let me say to the lady, we have passed, thanks to Danny Davis of Illinois, the Second Chance Act. It is now law. And we have incentivized,
and that is,
that's now a word,
right.
The employers to give a second chance to the incarcerated. It's now law, and we ought to use that law and go to the Employment Security Commission in your local community and let them know that you have this problem.
What kind of incentives? What are we talking about? Money?
Tax credits, etc. For employers who will allow a second chance for some of these.
One of the things, Dr. Dyson's point, if we don't know it, that's why people that go to these companies are turned down. They can come to groups like National Action Network. Again, we're at nationalactionnetwork.net or Urban League and ACP. We've got to press these companies. There are a lot of things that we're not taking advantage of it because we don't know it. If people don't know it, they will not be able to access it, and that's what we've got to stop.
Dyson.
Yeah, well, the thing is, a few things. First of all, they are stigmatized. When returning prisoners come back into society, if we don't have church organizations that can receive them with open arms, don't just have a prison ministry on the beginning end when you go visit people in prison, have a reentry program where you remove the stigma and then reemploy them. Secondly, when we talk about fighting this ignorance with statistics, fight stereotypes with statistics, non-resident black fathers spend more time with their children. A study came out from Boston 2 years ago than any group of men in America. So stop the stereotype. And thirdly, we can't criminalize black masculinity. Black people are used for our style as men on the gridiron and the basketball court, but it's demonized when it comes to school. Re-energize those African American males. And let me finally say this: in terms of the pop culture, you talk about all the stuff we learned.
10 seconds, Doc.
Okay, let me say this. I'm just saying this. It's not only about turning your television. It's about if Booty Call comes out, you go see it. But if P.D. Green movie comes out that's directed by something positive, uplifting to black folk, you're gonna see it. You vote with your pocketbooks. Right. Go see the stuff that you want to see represented.
One second. Real quick, Danny.
Yeah, it's not the ultimate solution, but the kinds of things that we have to hold our legislators accountable for. I believe it ought to be against the law to refuse somebody a job because they have a felony. I mean, so many of them.
That's the law right away.
One second. Warren.
That's the point I want to make as an attorney. Look, all this talking about churches and organizations, what needs to happen is non-violent felons should not have a felony on their record for the rest of their lives. That's what needs to happen. Legislation has to be passed for when these guys and girls get out of jail. If it was a non-violent felon within 2 years of being out of jail, it is never on their record. It's permanently removed.
I now want to go to someone joining our panel, hip-hop pioneer, we know from Public Enemy, Chuck D, has joined us.
I just like to ask, what stops the momentum of the corporatization of these prisons when they say, okay, the job market, these companies start to invest in these prisons, and all of a sudden the job market becomes almost like slave labor inside the prisons? What stops that?
It is. I mean, people don't know that the 13th Amendment that abolishes slavery puts an exception that says unless you've been convicted of a crime, which means that if you've been convicted of a crime, they can make you a slave. So when we say prisons are modern day slavery, we're not just using a creative analogy. That is the truth.
And education is used to take them there. And the educational system, the systemic racism in education is the pipeline to those jails. And until we deal with that problem, it will not go away. It will not go away.
And before I go to break, and before I go to break, we can have an extensive conversation about felons getting jobs, removing from the record. But the greater conversation has to be how not to become a felon. Yes, sir. And so we want to sit here and talk about that. Is making sure folks are not going. I mean, you can complain about a prison industrial complex, but the key is not getting into that complex. And so if you drop out of school, you got a greater chance. If you don't love your kids, a greater chance in joining a gang. So at some point, don't look at a prison system. Look at your household. Back with commitments in a moment.
Stay tuned for more of Measuring the Movement, and stay with News Talk 1090 AM WILD Boston, where information is power.